And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, April 11th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the announcement of, and I know I touched upon this yesterday, the Packers and the Eagles being the two teams that will be playing in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. I know we've known for a while that the Eagles were going to be the team that was going to be playing, but we were waiting on an opponent. It was either going to be the Packers or the Browns, and they indeed went with the Packers. So we'll get into that in a second. Then we'll talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars in the second part of the show. We'll talk about Josh Allen's massive contract that he got from the Jaguars. We'll also talk about the Jaguars and how they're going to bounce back, or going to try to bounce back from the collapse at the end of 2023. Then, in the third part of the show, a couple other things as well. We'll talk about Mike Gesicki and him praising Joe Burrow. Mike Gesicki was brought in by the Bengals to be the starting tight end. So we'll get into that, talk about the Bengals and what to expect from them in 2024. And then in the final part of the show, we will talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers as they look for a veteran wide receiver. There was an article on that, so I want to talk about that as well. Because I've talked about the Steelers a decent amount, so we're going to continue to do that on the show today. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the Packers and the Eagles. So these will be the two teams that will match up in Brazil. And I was just listening to Mark Murphy from the Packers, and he talked about how the Packers have one of the top fan bases in Brazil. And I know also from watching Tom Grassi as well, he said the same thing. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. This I know we're not going to preview it because it's so far in advance, but again, you know, talking about the two teams coming into this game, you know, with the Eagles, we'll talk about the Jaguars collapse in the next segment, but the Eagles one kind of overshadows that because the Eagles were 10-1 at one point. I mean, the Jaguars were 8-3 at one point, but the Eagles were 10-1. They were the top team in the NFC at one point, and they collapsed. And a lot of changes were made, new coordinators. They brought in guys, you know, on the defensive side of the ball, and also bringing in Saquon Barkley on the offensive side of the ball. They did lose Jason Kelce. They did lose Fletcher Cox. Both those guys retiring. So, yeah, it's going to be a little different not having those guys in the locker room. But I like the moves that they made on defense. The Barkley move, yeah, they overpaid for him, but if Barkley's healthy, that's a good move for them as well. And for them, they want to get back to running the football like they did in 2022. So you got them. And then on the other side, you got the Packers, who are one of the youngest teams in the NFL, were the youngest team in the NFL and still are. And I expect big things out of them as well. With Jordan Love now in year 2 being the full-time starter, you only expect them to go up. And they brought in Josh Jacobs. They brought in Xavier McKinney. So they made moves on both sides of the ball. Again, we still got the draft for both teams. But the Josh Jacobs move, again, I was very surprised by that. And again, for the moment, you thought that it was going to be Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs coming out of the backfield. And that was not the case because then the Packers let go of Aaron Jones. So now it's Josh Jacobs. They did bring back A.J. Dillon. So at least they have him back, even though he hasn't really been that great. But I'm excited for the Packers season, too. I think they're going to be a very good team. And I was watching a clip from the Rich Eisen show, and they were saying how someone leaked it out that it was going to be the Browns, but it ended up being the Packers as the opponent. And again, you look at the colors of the flag for Brazil, and that tells you all you need to know. that it was going to be the Packers. But also, again, the Packers have a large fan base in Brazil, from what I heard. So that must have maybe played a role in it as well. So, yeah, I mean, coming into this season, both these teams are going to have high expectations. And the Packers, they finished the season strong. Well, yeah, they finished the season strong. Again, you lost to the 49ers. You had the lead against them. Jordan Love throws that bad pick to end the game. But, again, the Packers, they have nothing to be ashamed of. I expect them to be good in 2024. And the Eagles, they want to try to, rewrite the wrong and not have this collapse and put the collapse behind them and go out and be the team that was 10-1. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch that. And also, again, the game is on Peacock, so either get a subscription, or if you know somebody, then maybe ask for their account if they're not a sports fan, or get together for the game, because it is on a Friday night. So, and I'm looking forward to it. But the other thing too is the NFL is occupying every single day of the week except for Tuesday. And all right, for some reason, camera just decides to. I was having a little bit of issues before going live today, so that just out of nowhere decides to do that. That's all right. But yeah. So the NFL basically occupying every single day of the week except for Tuesday. So, and I did see something that they're not going to. Manny, the Chip Shot Football Podcast host, I believe he did a short on the NFL, basically, passing on having games on Christmas Eve. They're only going to have games on Christmas, the 2 games on Christmas. And, yeah, so that's what's going to be happening. No games on Tuesday, so Tuesday's not getting any love. So, and we'll see in the future if the NFL finds a way to put a game on Tuesday. But right now, yeah, you got Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, the Saturday games late in the season when college football ends, or we're in the playoffs for it. Then you got Sunday, of course. Now you're going to have Wednesday because of Christmas falling on a Wednesday. You got the Friday games, well, the Black Friday game, as well as the game in Brazil. Tuesday doesn't have anything. So, yeah, but the NFL is occupying every day of the week, basically, in 2024. So, and, again, not a big fan of it. Not a huge fan. Not really thrilled that it's going to be on Christmas again, because from a fantasy perspective, if you got a big matchup, you don't want to be sweating that out while you're with family, enjoying the holiday, if you celebrate it, of course, because that's what happened to me, because I was in my semifinals for my fantasy playoffs, and I ended up losing by a point. And again, if I was at home by myself, I would have definitely threw something. Well, I did drop my phone because I just was devastated over the loss, but I just don't want to have to deal with that. But again, I say that I might not even make the playoffs. So, we're ways away from drafting and things like that. But, yeah, not really thrilled about that. But also, I don't think the players are thrilled about it either, because it's just, it just, you're risking more injuries. Even though the NFL will say, there's no risk for that. They conduct their own research. But we'll see how this game goes here. But I'm really excited about it, because I think it's an enticing matchup, and both teams have high expectations going into 2024. So, and we'll find out everything else next month when the schedule comes out, because we will do a show just covering the schedule when it comes out, all the big games, all the rematches and players going back to their old teams when all that is. I'm looking forward to that as well. But Yeah, I mean, for the quarterbacks, too. I mean, for Jordan Love, you're hoping that he carries over what he did towards the end of the year into 2024. And for Jalen Hurts, the uh, the criticisms of Jalen Hurts, they were out in full force. And I know some of the comments I was looking at when they announced the matchup, they were talking about, like, because the caption was like, "Oh, you got top quarterbacks going at it in Brazil," and people were saying, "Well, Jordan Love's a top quarterback, not Jalen Hurts." So Jalen Hurts has got to prove some doubters wrong in 2024, and I think he will. I think it's hard for him. I think not to succeed in this offense with the players around him. But now, if you go into 2024 and more of the same happens, that's good. That's a problem. That is a problem. But I mean, it's hard for me to look at the Eagles and say that they're going to be bad. They're not. They're going to be a good team. I think Jalen Hurts will bounce back. The Eagles also lost two great coordinators, and that also I think played a role in that. So yeah, it's a big year for Hurts, big year for Nick Sirianni, I think, because if the Eagles do end up having a bad season somehow, I think he probably is out. So again, I mean, this game is not going to define all that, but this is just some of the things that you could look at going into this game here. Again, not going to. It's again, both teams are going to have high expectations, and I'm expecting it to be a good game. So not going to pick it or anything because it's only April, but it's definitely going to be interesting. So I'm looking forward to it, and yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with this game. So let me know what you guys think about this game. What do you expect from it? Um, yeah, at least we got one game to look forward to. It well, one of the games, another game is set here. That's what I was trying to say. So you got that, and the night before, of course you're gonna have the Chiefs opening up against an unknown opponent, and then of course you got all the games on Sunday, and I think maybe a doubleheader on Monday night. I forget, what did they do in week 1? I know the second week they did a doubleheader. I don't know about that. I think the first week maybe it was just one game, but who knows? Because I remember, like, they used to have a game would be on at 7, then you had a game on at 10, but they haven't done that in a while, so we'll see what they end up doing. But they're going to continue with the doubleheaders on Monday night, and I don't like having two games on at the same time, two nationally televised games, but that's what they decided to do, so just have to deal with that. So we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we will discuss a couple things with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll talk about Josh Allen's new deal. Not Josh Allen from the Bills, but Josh Allen of the Jaguars. As well as their redemption, because they're another team that is looking to bounce back in 2024 after a rough ending to their season, a collapse of their own. So that's what we will get into when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.